Okay, members, the sitting has resumed. Members, it is now time for questions to the Minister for the Economy. Question 10 has been withdrawn, and I call Jerry Carroll to ask the first question. Jerry Carroll.
Question number 1.
Mr Speaker, I have not granted any petroleum licences, and there are currently no petroleum licences in place in Northern Ireland.
Supplementary, Jerry Carroll.
Thank you. Thanks for the Minister's answer. I don't know if that's exactly the case. Minister, given that there is widespread concern about the environmental impact of petroleum licensing on local habitats, people who work on the land, does he accept that we need to keep all fossil fuel reserves in the ground if we have a chance to stop climate change, and does he support a ban to prevent any progression of any future petroleum licences?
Well, Mr Speaker, as he will be aware, one of my predecessors commissioned independent research into this issue. That report is being given consideration as part of the development of policy options for the future of petroleum licensing. The report will be published when the Department is in a position to publicly consult on the future options for petroleum licensing, but of course that needs to be considered and approved by the Executive first.
I call Keith Archibald.
And I thank the Minister for that response. I wrote to the Minister's predecessor in January 2020 setting out Sinn Féin's opposition to petroleum licensing in the North, and I understand the Department has had the report that the Minister refers to since July. The lack of clarity since then is causing anxiety and concern to communities who have also voiced clear opposition to petroleum licensing. So can the Minister at least provide a date for when the report will be published?
Well, Mr Speaker, I previously said that I hope to be able to take that to the Executive by the end of this year, and that still is my intention.
Stuart Dixon.
Mr Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your answer with regards to this question. Minister, you'll be aware that there was recently a leak of information around this report. That is unhelpful in that we need to have the report in front of us so that everybody can see it. But Minister, can you indicate now the direction of travel that the Department will be going in to assure the public that we will no longer be exploring for petroleum or other carbon-based fuels in Northern Ireland, and that those fuels will be left in the ground where they rightly belong? We need a very clear statement from you, Minister, and from your Department with regards to this.
Well, Mr Speaker, of course this isn't just a decision for me, but rightly it is an executive decision. That's why independent research has been commissioned. That will be part of the evidence base that we use whenever we discuss this as an executive, and that report then will then be published once we consult on policy options.
Call Mark Bradley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. Minister, in view of some of the comments made around the House, are there any live applications in the system that would include fracking, and has the Minister approved any?
Mr Speaker, that would be a no to both of those questions.
Moving on, call Doug Beattie.
Question 2, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, the policy options consultation included a commitment to publish the energy strategy before the end of 2021, and this remains the case. It is my intention to bring the energy strategy to the Executive at its next meeting, subject to the approval of the First and Deputy First Minister. The energy strategy has been at an advanced stage, but I wanted to consider it in the context of recent steep global energy price rises, and through my attendance at COP26 I was also able to better understand the significant economic opportunities for Northern Ireland arising from global energy decarbonisation.
Supplementary, Doug Beattie.
Thank the Minister for that. I mean, it's good to see that it's still on track to be out before the end of this year. But would the Minister consider, in conjunction with the Communities Minister, setting up a fuel poverty task force to deal with that very real issue that people are facing today?
Well, Mr Speaker, the member is absolutely right to recognise the issue of fuel poverty and the problems that it is causing. It always has been a significant issue in Northern Ireland, but even more so now because of the unprecedented price increases in the current cost of gas, in particular, at the wholesale price of that. He will be aware that fuel poverty is the direct responsibility of the Department for Communities, and it's right that the Communities Minister leads on that. However, in the medium to longer term, I want to bring forward an energy strategy that actually addresses those issues in that time frame to make sure that we have affordable and secure energy supply in Northern Ireland.
Call Peter Weir.
And I think it's right that the Minister has paused to ensure that COP26, the reflections of that are reflected in the energy strategy, as well as actually the changing energy prices, which are not something that simply will be for very short-term side of things. Would the Minister agree with me that the key elements of any energy strategy have got to be energy security, but also actually for the burden that is placed upon our both consumers and businesses, affordability?
Yes, that's absolutely the case. Affordability is something that is to the fore of all of our minds right now. We recognise the impact that the cost of fuel is having on poverties, as Mr Beattie has already stated. And of course, all of our constituents are affected by this, and not just constituents as individuals, but businesses as well. That's why it's so vitally important that affordability is at the heart of everything that we do. And as well as making sure that we can have more affordable energy, we can also help people by making sure that they use that energy as efficiently as possible, which is why this is going to be a key part, I hope, of the strategy that executive colleagues will agree to, because of course the cheapest form of energy is the energy that you don't use at all, and I think that we need to be looking at how we can invest in our buildings in particular to ensure that we're as energy efficient as possible.
Call Matthew O'Toole.
Minister, when we've asked the Department multiple times about issues like fuel poverty, we've been told to wait for the energy strategy. When we've asked about support for microgeneration, we've been told to wait for the energy strategy. Now, while that's understandable up to a point, you've said today it will be published before the end of the year. Can you give us certainty that when it's published you will come to the Assembly and allow us to question you on what's in the energy strategy, so that we can best understand that it's going to meet the very important energy transition questions and affordability questions we all have?
Well, Mr Speaker, it's always the case, I think, as a Minister, that I've opened myself up to the scrutiny of this Assembly, and I am more than happy to take any questions that any of the members have. This is a strategy that I think will receive broad support. It is one which all government departments have been working together on, and I understand and recognise the role of this House to ask those questions, maybe difficult questions at times, and I will be open to that.
Call Philip McGuigan.
Minister, the Department has already indicated that we won't see any legislation in this mandate coming from the energy strategy, but given the urgency of these issues, as others have already indicated, not least the need to move forward to decarbonise and also the massive impact of the rising cost of energy, can the Minister at the very least indicate what aspects of the strategy will be brought forward, and can I give a commitment that this will be done as soon as possible in the next mandate?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm not able to give any commitment about what happens in the next mandate because, first of all, I may not be in this post, and secondly, I can't tie the hands of any future Minister or Assembly, so it will be up to them to decide. It's my job now to bring this strategy to the Executive. It will be up to the Executive to decide whether or not it gives it the support, but of course we'll want to move forward with what's in it as soon as possible, because that's how we'll make the difference and make the change and impact upon people's lives and on businesses and jobs as well.
I call William Irwin.
Number 3, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, this change to the red diesel rebate is being progressed by HM Treasury and is not a taxation issue, which is within the scope of devolution. However, as Economy Minister, although I've had limited correspondence in relation to this change that will be taking place, I am aware of the impact that it will have on the construction industry in particular and the cost that will add to consumers, but in particular in relation to mining and quarrying, waste management and commercial heating, there will be an impact here for businesses, and that will most likely be passed to consumers.
Supplementary, William Irwin.
Thank you. Can I thank the Minister for his response? Will the Minister accept there can be huge implications? I know, for instance, there are those that work for farmers in the morning and they may drive a mechanical digger all day, and in the evening they're on the building site with a local bungalow doing excavation work. how do they change from one fuel to the other in 3 hours? I mean, it's nearly impossible. It would be very difficult to work.
The member's absolutely right. There are changes here to various industries that will be taking place, but if you work in both with the same piece of machinery, that's the difficulty that's going to cause. I'm not sure if the government have thought all this through. It's an issue that I have in part already raised with the Finance Minister to take a lead on with the government at Westminster, but I think it's another example of the difficulties that it can cause and puts people that are in those businesses in particular into difficulty.
Colin McNesbitt.
Speaker, the Minister will be aware that some key installations, not least power stations, have reserves of red diesel in case of emergency. Has the Minister secured an exemption for these installations?
So, Mr Speaker, the Finance Bill will require Northern Ireland electricity generators to replace the rebated fuel with white diesel prior to the 1st of April 2022, and that will result in Ballylumford and Kilroot burning existing stocks of red diesel in advance of the deadline to completely purge and clean storage tanks to accept white diesel. And of course, there are significant additional costs to replace the red diesel. I have been in correspondence in relation to this, but there has been no exemption secured for Northern Ireland at this point.
Melissa McHugh.
Concorda agus buíos leis an air fásta fahaine the Bratches Gujisha. Thank you, Minister, for your statement so far. Minister, just in relation to the red diesel, have you had any engagement with ministers in the Republic of Ireland, given the possible impact that the removal of red diesel rebate will have on businesses operating in the border regions, and I think of my own region in particular, where they will potentially be faced with two different sets of regulations?
No, I have not had those conversations with any ministers in the Republic of Ireland.
Chris Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Is the Economy Department on schedule to meet the targeted removal of red diesel from our roads?
Mr Speaker, I think that's a policy area of responsibility for my department.
Pat McGlone.
John Coley, and thank the Minister for his engagement on this issue. Can the Minister advise what aspects or what measures his own department are attempting to take to mitigate the worst impact of this, in fact, this use of red diesel? Because we've heard of the technical aspects of it, but there is one very practical aspect, and that's the wait of 12 weeks to potentially get the redemption back on the money, the duty that you paid, or if representations have been made to Westminster around this particular matter.
Well, certainly it is the case that this is a taxation issue, and as a result, it is the Department of Finance that primarily engages with the Treasury on these issues. I have previously expressed some of the concerns I've had in relation to this. I have picked up more since that, so I will be having further correspondence with the Government, first of all to ensure that they recognise the implications of the actions that they are taking, and then also to see what mitigations can be in place to protect us from the worst of those.
Call Paula Bradshaw.
Mr Speaker, in my statement to the Assembly on the 2nd of November 2021, I announced that I would be extending the deadline for people to use their Spend Local prepaid card from the 30th of November to the 14th of December. This provided a further 2 weeks for people to use their card. This will provide applicants, especially those who are receiving their cards now, a fairer timescale to use their card. It will also provide additional time for people who have already used their card to spend any remaining balance, no matter how small that may be, to support those businesses that were hit so hard by the pandemic. It remains the case that most people will have had at least 4 weeks to spend their card, but I do recognise that this will not be the case for everyone. To date, 1,399,877 cards have been dispatched, and 1,350,436 of these have been activated. And as of today, over £115 million has been injected into our local economy. I have been very encouraged with the feedback from local businesses, chambers of commerce and trade representatives from all parts of Northern Ireland, and they have been telling me how important the economic boost from the spend on the card has been and continues to be in helping them recover from the severest impacts of the pandemic. and I have and will continue to encourage everyone to fully spend their Spend Local prepaid card to support Northern Ireland's local businesses right up to the scheme closing date.
Supplementary, Paula Bradshaw.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your response. And yes, some of the figures are very encouraging, but there remain some constituents of mine who have not yet received their card. I had a correspondence from a constituent today. He was advised on 26th that his details have been verified, and as of today he still hasn't got his card. Minister, there are a lot of people who are relying on this £100, not least those people who lost their jobs during the pandemic. What will you do for those people who have not received their cards? Will they be compensated? Thank you.
Mr Speaker, I'm sure that the member, like all other members of this House, have had constituents who are yet to receive their card. I'm pleased that another 4,500 cards are being sent out today. We are now using a next-day delivery service as well to ensure that the cards get out as quickly as possible. We believe that is important because it is in everybody's interest that they get their card. It's in everybody's interest that they spend what's on it as well. And MLAs are continuing to get in contact with the department to assist those who haven't yet received their card, and my department remains ready to help those who need it.
Call Stephen Dunn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answers. Does the Minister believe the scheme is delivering upon the twin objective of both providing an economic stimulus to our high streets and also on reorientating people back away from clicks to bricks?
Mr Speaker, I believe that it has, and I think we need only look at the figures so far in terms of the uptake of the scheme and in terms of the spend. This far it's been very, very encouraging. I've spoken, as I've said, to Chambers of Commerce, to local retailers right across Northern Ireland, and everybody's saying the same thing, that they're getting people into their shops, retail premises, entertainment facilities, leisure facilities, who maybe haven't been in a while or wouldn't otherwise have come in if they hadn't had their card. So I think that's great news, and I want to thank everybody that's been involved in the promotion of this scheme, and I know people right across the House have been encouraging people to apply and to spend local. So I think it absolutely is bringing people and giving that short-term economic boost. Nobody can doubt that, but there is some evidence as well to suggest that people are not only going once and spending their card, but they're starting to come back again, or they're being brought into the high streets. They spend their card and then they come back because they see something in another shop. And we had some really encouraging statistics earlier on, or towards the end of last week, which showed that the footfall in Northern Ireland on our high streets is significantly improved compared to other regions of the UK, Scotland, England and Wales. So I think it is working in both of those objectives, but I would just encourage people to continue to spend and make sure you use everything that's on your card and give as much of a boost to the high street as we can.
Well, Liz Kimmins.
And I thank the Minister for his answer so far. And like the previous member, I've been dealing with scores and scores of people who still haven't received their card, and hopefully, less than just over a week out from the deadline, I hope they receive them very, very soon. But Minister, one of the other issues that there have been some concerns around is those people who have applied for the card but maybe haven't used it or activated for whatever reason. And I would be interested if you could provide some figures on the numbers of eligible people who haven't applied for the card, or for those who have applied but haven't activated their card so far.
Mr Speaker, we don't have a list or the number of potential people who could have applied but didn't. I think we publicised it very well, the scheme. Our own estimates suggest that there was in around 1.4 million people in Northern Ireland, and then around 1.4 million people have applied. So I think there has been an exceptionally high uptake rate. In terms of those that haven't activated their card, as I said earlier, 1,399,877 people have had their cards sent to them, but 1,350,436 have had their card activated. So there's in around 50,000 people who've received their card but haven't activated it yet. I suppose you don't need to activate your card until you spend it, but I would encourage everybody to do that as soon as possible, and again encourage everybody to go out and make sure that it's spent before the deadline, and not only spend some of it but spend everything that's on the card. Last week on average there were £17 left on every card. Today that's £11, so people are using it up, but I would just encourage everybody to do it before the deadline.
Call Daniel Crossan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for the answers to questions so far, and I also want to put on record my thanks to his department for the swift way in which they are responding to our offices. It has been very helpful and has been quite swift as well on many occasions. Minister, there has been reference this week that 3,000 phone calls have been made per day to the department in relation to concerns around the scheme. I'm just wondering overall, what is the actual cost of the administrating of this scheme, aside from the actual cost of the cards themselves?
Mr. Speaker, I don't have that information there. I know it does exist. I don't have it here in front of me, but I'm more than happy to provide that to the member in writing. I hope he'll understand that I don't have all of that here, but happy to write to him with that information.
Nicole Roy Beggs.
Question number 5.
Mr. Speaker, throughout the pandemic, the Health and Safety Executive has sought to utilise the information emanating from the Public Health Agency and utilise this in a way that would assist employers to keep their staff safe and to allow them to continue to function. That advice has been offered not only through face-to-face inspections, but via email, telephone conversations, social media, and of course regularly updated advice on the Health and Safety Executive website. The Health and Safety Executive has no varies in areas such as leisure, retail and hospitality, but the role has been critical in ensuring that food production and processing, the transport and logistics sector, as well as key manufacturing sites, have been able to continue throughout the pandemic to protect our economy while keeping people safe in the workplace. And the Health and Safety Executive has provided direction or advice during 1,736 COVID-related site visits since the start of the pandemic.
Roy Beggs, supplementary.
Minister, there have been some super-spreading events which have endangered both staff and patrons. I think in terms of the Ilk Disco in Tombridge, where over 200 young people contracted COVID and took it home to their families. So can I ask the Minister, does he accept that in such high-risk venues, COVID certificates or proof of a negative lateral flow test reduces the likelihood of the spread of COVID and ultimate pressures on our hospitals? And what role does the Health and Safety Executive play in monitoring and enforcing the regulations?
First of all, the Health and Safety Executive doesn't have any role. It doesn't have the legal powers or the people to enforce those regulations. So I don't think that would be a way in which that we could enforce the regulations that are in place. In relation to his first question, we don't have any evidence, certainly no evidence was provided to us on how the COVID vaccine certification would actually help reduce the transmission of the virus. Negative lateral flow tests potentially could have some use because they're able to tell you about the immediate status, and I accept that. However, my concern with the negative lateral flow tests are first of all that they're self-certifying and there is a degree of room there for fraud. In relation to the vaccine passport certification themselves, certainly the evidence that I have seen from Oxford and from the Lancet shows that a vaccinated person and an unvaccinated person are just as likely to transmit the virus as anybody else. So therefore I don't think there is the strong evidence there that we would need in order to say that vaccine passports are going to significantly or in any way reduce the transmission of COVID-19. That's why I have concerns with them. That's why I believe that it's wrong for them to come in. There will be one big impact, though, and that will be on our hospitality sector in particular. And we have heard about the number of bookings that have been cancelled. We've heard about the concerns that many people have, and in particular what I have received from the hospitality industry is the cost and concerns around the implementation of such a scheme. That's where the difficulties have come from, and a lot of people feeling they're going to have to deploy additional staff to bring those in. So those are where my concerns come from, but certainly it's not a role for the Health and Safety Executive.
Gemma Dolan.
And I thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, earlier in the pandemic, the COVID engagement forum helped to make workplaces safe by bringing together trade unions, public health agencies and business representative groups together to shape an agreed COVID safety policy for the workplace. Do you agree that there needs to be a coordinated engagement on issues of compliance and enforcement?
Well, I think that clearly compliance with the rules that have been put in place are important, and enforcement is of course a very, very difficult area because who is going to do the enforcement in a lot of cases is the question that people are asking themselves. A lot of this responsibility has been left on hospitality and these other industries in particular, and that creates difficulty for them, and that's where a lot of the concern comes from as well. It's not a role that the Health and Safety Executive are able to jump into. I do want to say this though, because I think it's often missed. Hospitality and other industries, I think, have worked very well together and have spent an awful lot of time and effort and energy and money making their establishments as secure as possible. And I think if you look at some of the statistics as to where spread has potentially taken place, I think it shows the safety and relative safety of some of these establishments. And certainly I want to pay tribute to all of those who have absorbed that cost in order to keep people safe.
Matthew O'Toole.
Mr. Speaker, Minister, I agree that hospitality is vital, and hospitality has suffered a terrible 18 months, but I'm sure you will agree with me that it is critical to the functioning of the Executive in a pandemic that there's a unified message on public health measures from ministers once the Executive has agreed to them. To that end, could you confirm whether you authorised someone to leak a letter to the BBC 2 days after the Omicron variant was first established? On Friday the 26th of November, a letter from you outlining your supposed opposition to COVID certification.
Mr. Speaker, there have been many, many leaks across many, many months within the Executive, and I am not sure who is responsible for those leaks, but that has happened, and I think it's from many different people over that period of time. The member asked specifically in relation to a unity within the Executive. It's certainly my view that other ministers in the past have expressed their concern in relation to Executive policy. And sometimes they think it's gone too far, other times they think it hasn't gone far enough. And I was very open and upfront with Executive colleagues and also publicly about my position. And I don't need to hide behind anybody else leaking anything. I've been upfront about my position.
Stuart Dixon.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Minister. Minister, the message coming out from the Executive is that we're all in this together. Are your words today not rather undermining that message by giving mixed messages in relation to COVID certification, to lateral flow tests and to supporting agencies like the Health and Safety Executive, our public health officers and others? Are we not truly, Minister, all in this together? And is it not important that this Assembly, and particularly your Executive, speaks with one voice?
Mr. Speaker, I'm here to defend the hospitality industry, which I feel has been unfairly treated. I'm here to raise concerns that have been expressed about the impacts of the policies that have been put in place. I recognise that other Executive colleagues have taken a different decision. I think the Executive is united in wanting to make sure that we defeat this pandemic, that we get out to the other side. But my view is that we should take measures that are proportionate. I believe that we should take measures that are evidence-based and that actually deal with the issues. And I think it's right that I express those concerns.
I call Harry Harvey.
Question 6, Mr. Speaker.
Mr Speaker, the utility regulator is responsible for regulating the electricity and gas industries in Northern Ireland, including prices where necessary, and maintains continuous engagement with energy providers as part of this process. I do not have the power to halt fuel price increases. However, my officials continue to work with the utility regulator and the Consumer Council to ensure that consumers are protected as much as possible through the regulated domestic tariff regime for both electricity and gas in Northern Ireland.
And that ends the period for list of questions, members. We now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions. Question 5 and 9 have been withdrawn, and I call Pat Ketney.
I've come from a task force which is set up to regenerate the High Street, and we must get more business people on that. Minister, what is your department doing to tackle the incorrect information being sent to licensed premises about their liability and risk of legal action if they are to enforce the rules on domestic COVID certificates?
Mr Speaker, I'm not aware of what it is that the member is referring to, but if he wants to illuminate me, I'll be more than happy to look into that.
The licensed premises that have contacted the owners are writing out to me to tell me and to inform me that they're getting threat letters from your department if they don't enforce these. Whether that is 100% correct or not, I'm not sure. But no, all help should be given to licensed premises in order to see that they can open safely and agree with the rules as thus laid down. Minister, if you agree with me then that the only way to keep those businesses open this Christmas is to do all we can to prevent the spread of the virus, including promoting the rollout of booster vaccines and the full use of the domestic COVID certificates. Do you agree with me on those few lines, Minister?
Well, Mr Speaker, first of all, I'm not aware of any threatening letters that have been sent out by my department. I'm more than happy to. I don't really think you can come in. I think this is question time rather than a debate, but I'm more than happy to speak to the member afterwards if he can give me some evidence of this. I'm more than happy to do that. And yes, I think we should do all that we can to prevent the spread of this virus. And I think I've set out quite clearly my view and my position when it comes to COVID certification. I look at the evidence, I look at what's happened elsewhere, I look at other jurisdictions that haven't taken this any further because of the lack of evidence that it has worked. That is my position because I look to the hospitality industry, recognise the concerns that they have expressed and want to do everything I can to help that sector.
Caller Leah Flynn.
And I know this issue actually came up earlier in question time, but I just wanted to ask the Minister, I'm aware that with the High Street voucher scheme, 6 million was put in to administer the scheme, and then an email was sent out, I think there was a deadline of midnight on Sunday night for people that had inquiries if they haven't received their cards as yet. So my question is, what is being done to ensure that all those people who, as of today, haven't received a card, what's being done to ensure that they will receive one, or will they receive one before the deadline? Thank you.
I thank the member for her question, and this was raised earlier on in question time, and I had made the point that we're doing everything that we can to make sure everybody that was verified is now getting their card. That includes moving to next day delivery, so that we make sure that people are getting their cards as soon as possible. We have a team in the department that is working, going through these emails and trying to get those out. So we're doing everything that we can. We understand the concerns that exist out there. Another 4,500 went out today. More will come out in the coming days, and I hope that people will be able to get those as soon as possible so they can spend them locally.
Supplementary, Orlia Flynn.
Yep, thank you, and hopefully that will be reassuring because I know there is many people and we're all getting the inquiries for those that haven't actually physically received their card yet, so hopefully that's in process. Just as a follow-on question then, Minister, I would like to ask, the rationale behind the scheme was obviously around, creating economic stimulus for the economy, and I'm just wondering if even at this early stage can the department provide any estimates as to how much of a stimulus has actually been created?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we do know that £115 million has been spent in our local economy, and you will be aware, I'm sure, of the figures from Retail NI. Whenever we spend local, 63% of that is recycled within the local economy. It's too early to say exactly the impact that it's had. We know it's been incredible. We know that it has had a fantastic effect in terms of the footfall in our town and city centres over the course of the last month in particular. So I think that's really, really important that we have that in place for the footfall alone, but there will be longer term economic benefits that come from this as well, because as I'd said earlier on, people are going back into the high street again. People are going again and again after they've used their cards. So yes, it's about a short-term economic boost, but it's also about getting that interest back in our high street again and showing people what there is on offer. The fact that you can go physically into a shop, that you can buy something that you can take home that day, that you have the customer service as well, all in one place, and the feedback from retail in particular has been fantastic.
Anya Murphy.
Can Collier, and I'd like to thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, as you know, we are in the midst of a climate crisis, and communities will suffer if we don't take action now to reduce our carbon footprint, to allow the creation of an oil and gas industry in the north in the face of overwhelming evidence of the harm that this industry will cause. This will have serious consequences on our communities. Can you confirm if a ban on petroleum licensing is among the options you are considering to present to the Executive following your examination of the Hatch report?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said in a previous answer to Mr. Carroll, I think it was, these issues will all be considered by the Executive. I'm going to be taking that paper, I hope, in the coming weeks to the Executive. It will be up to us collectively to make a decision, and that's when they will then publish the report.
Supplementary, Anya Murphy.
Thank you, Minister. Sorry, I've just lost the second one. Yeah, we are now 6 months on. This is in relation to the Hatch report itself. We're now 6 months on, and its contents has still not publicly been released. Minister, could I ask the reasoning behind the delay in the public release of the Hatch report?
The reason for the delay is that I want to take this to Executive colleagues first to get the way forward on a policy decision, and then at that stage I will be releasing the report to the public.
Call Claire Bailey.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm staying with the Hatch report. The Minister be aware, of course, that a leaked copy claiming to be the Hatch report is appearing on social media, and I'm sure you're too busy to have kept an eye on that and read it yourself, but I'm sure your departmental officials have. Minister, can I ask if that report is the one on your desk?
Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the member on her ingenuity in asking that question. However, as I've said before, the report will be published once the Executive has made its decision, and I'll not be commenting on any leaks before then.
Supplementary, Claire Bailey.
Thank you. Then can I seek some assurance then from the Minister that he can assure this House that absolutely no farmland in Northern Ireland will be given over to the fracking industry?
Well, Mr. Speaker, these will be decisions for the Executive to take, and as I've said before, I hope to bring that paper to the Executive very shortly with a decision to be made, and then the report can be released.
And Jerry Carroll's not in the seat, and I call Pam Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Minister for the Economy if he can give us an update on the preparations for the Holiday at Home scheme?
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the Holiday at Home scheme is now not proceeding. I had looked forward to being able to bring this scheme through, because I recognise the difficult time that hotels and the hospitality industry more generally has had over the last number of months. I had brought this to my department. They were considering the business case for the scheme, but were unable to confirm that it offered value for money. However, because I believed that it would give that much-needed boost and combine private and public sector money, that it would have been worth considering. So I therefore issued a ministerial direction to my departmental accounting officer, and that required it to be taken to the Executive or to the Minister of Finance. Unfortunately, the Executive was not willing to approve the scheme, and neither was the Department for Finance. So unfortunately, it will now not be able to progress.
Supplementary, Pam Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answer, although it is a very disappointing answer. What more can be done in terms of your department to ensure that support does go to those smaller businesses in the tourism industry, such as B&Bs, going forward now that the scheme is not going to go ahead?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to bring the scheme in, because I knew it would have created a significant economic boost. Again, with the High Street scheme, we had the £100 cards, and we saw the huge impact that that had on our high streets. This scheme would have been a little bit different. It wouldn't have been open to everybody, but it would have required that public financing as well as people having to use their own money. So I thought that would have been a really good way to boost the economy and keep the hospitality and hotel sector in particular going during those really difficult months of January, February and March time. I have, however, managed to secure an additional £6.5 million of funding to enable Tourism Northern Ireland and Tourism Ireland to undertake significant additional marketing to promote our tourism offer in Great Britain and internationally during the remainder of the financial year. And so I hope in some way that does help those businesses that are struggling in that way. However, it is also estimated that around £1.6 million of expenditure within the High Street scheme has been with accommodation providers and tourism attractions. So I hope that in some way that has given that little bit of support. But like I say, I'm very disappointed that I wasn't able to secure support for what could have been really beneficial measures during a really difficult time.
Pass McGlone.
Could I ask the Minister, just in regard to the High Street voucher scheme, has the Minister given any consideration, given that it appears there, indeed from my office, that there appears there are quite a few who haven't received the card yet, has the Minister given any consideration to extension of the cut-off date for the card?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my focus right now is on dealing with these applications that are outstanding. Like I've said in responses to answers before, 4,500 are due to be sent out again today. It's incredible that we have just a couple of hundred shy of 1.4 million people card. 1.4 million cards have been sent out to people. It's unfortunate that there are a very, very small number that are left, but I'm doing everything that I can to make sure they get those as soon as possible.
Supplementary, Pat McGlone.
Thanks very much. But can I ask the Minister if you've ruled out the possibility of an extension, because some of these people are older, maybe with disabilities, and it's just not the easiest thing for them to turn them around within the expenditure round within just a day or two, which is, we're coming very close. And just incidentally, it could be your forbearance, Mr. Speaker, could I pay tribute to those staff who have been working at the department, and also yourself for your cooperation over weekends and the likes to turn these cards around. I could name some of them individually, but that would be inappropriate to the rest of them, I'm sure, that are working away very, very hard and trying to get the expenditure out the door.
No, that's okay, Mr. Speaker. I can just take all the credit myself if you want. But no, I do appreciate the work that MLAs have done as well in bringing these to our attention. It's in our interest to make sure that everybody gets the card. We'll be doing everything that we can to push that on, and we'll consider. I think we'll have a better idea of where we're at tomorrow in terms of the cards that are still outstanding.
Well, Marsh Bradley.
Mr. Speaker, to ask the Minister, does he see any opportunities in the Middle East following his recent visit there that would come to Northern Ireland, be specific to Northern Ireland?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Speaker. I think that the visit to Dubai a couple of weeks ago demonstrated a range of opportunities that exist for Northern Ireland. Firstly, there's those opportunities to link our further and higher education systems closer together and make sure that we make the most of those links that we have established in recent years. I think there's also huge opportunities for Northern Ireland companies who are exporting to not just the United Arab Emirates but right across the Middle East. And we heard again and again during our visit the real opportunities that now exist with Saudi Arabia, and I was pleased to meet with representatives from Saudi Arabia as well. But the outlook is really positive in terms of new opportunities that exist in cyber, AI, fintech, agri-tech, med-tech. So there are many, many opportunities for us there, and it's important that we're out in those markets and that we're making most of those opportunities.
That's a brief question and response, please, from Maurice Bradley. Supplementary.
Speaker, thank you very much, Minister, for your answer there. Will the Minister be given as much financial support, especially to the higher education establishments and attracting students from Saudi Arabia?
Yes, absolutely. We have fantastic opportunities not only to partner with other further and higher education establishments in the wider Middle East, but also to get more international students, particularly from that region, in. And the connections that we are building up in the United Arab Emirates will help to get more of those students here in Northern Ireland.
Members' time is up. Members, please take a ease before we move on to next questions to the Minister for Education.